Good morning, everyone. Today I'd like to talk about patience for a few minutes. The Bible has a lot to say about patience, and I thought it might be nice to define it first. Patience is the capacity to accept and tolerate delay, problems, or suffering without becoming annoyed, anxious, or angry. There's a very sad story in the Bible about somebody being impatient, and it's in 1 Samuel chapter 13, book of Samuel chapter 13, 1 Samuel 13. It talks about an ancient king called Saul. Now in the Old Testament, as you well know, kings ruled the nations. Priests attended to the religious requirements of the nations as specified by God, and there were prophets who had a particular function, and they were the three main categories of senior people in the Old Testament. And if we turn to 1 Samuel chapter 13, you'll find a very sad story there when Saul was king and Samuel was the prophet. They had a battle against the Philistines, and they won against a section of the Philistine army. And there were instructions in the Bible from the prophets about sacrifices and how and where they were to be offered. And the decision was, Samuel said they would have a sacrifice on a particular day. He told the king, Saul, I'll come down in 7 days from now and I will perform the religious sacrifice. And in 1 Samuel 13:8, it says, Saul waited 7 days according to the time that Samuel had set. But for some reason, it doesn't say why, Samuel didn't come to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. And then Saul made a decision in verse 9, 1 Samuel 13:9. King Saul said, bring me the burnt offerings and the peace offerings, and I will offer them to God. And then in verse 10, his timing was rather poor because he just made the offering when Samuel came. And Samuel said in 1 Samuel 13:11, what have you done? And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that you came not within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathered themselves together. Therefore I said, the Philistines will come down now upon me. So I forced myself, interesting comment, I forced myself to make the offering. And Samuel said to him, you have done foolishly. You are, in effect, a fool. And in verse 14, because of what Saul did, he lost his kingdom as the king of Israel. A very sad story about a man who couldn't wait a few days and took things into his own hands. That's what impatience does for us. We get tired of waiting and we think, well, I'll do this or I'll do that, when we should, in fact, have waited. Now, there are literally scores and scores of scriptures in the Bible telling us to be patient. We live today in a very, very impatient world. All the electronic equipment we have means instant communications, and they demand instant responses. Everything today is much, much quicker than it was even 100 years ago. Almost impossibly so. And therefore, we get used to moving fast, and we get used to things happening quickly, and we get used to having to make decisions quickly. Recently, there was a series of programs on television in the United Kingdom, and it was called Hell on the Motorway. And it wasn't one of the usual popular kind of programs about road accidents and so on. Each time on this occasion there was a team who analysed exactly what happened when an accident took place and talked about the distances and the amount of view and the angles of views that drivers had and road conditions and so on. It was, if you like, a kind of scholarly series on road accidents and how to avoid them. And at the conclusion of the programme, you may not be surprised to know that the question was asked, what is it that causes road accidents? What's the most usual cause? And they weren't talking about the UK. They had lots of accidents analysed in the United States of America, in China, and Thailand, all sorts of different countries. And the common factor that caused 90% of road accidents was impatience. Now, some people have had to wait in life for something to happen a very long time. Abraham, for example, waited 25 years before his promised heir arrived. Then we have one of the oldest books in the Bible, the book of Job. And Job had to wait a long time in the most awful circumstances. And many people think the book of Job is all about tribulation, but it isn't. The book of Job is all about faith and patience. Now, as Christians, we are commanded to be patient. In Romans chapter 12 and verse 9, it said, "Let love be without dissimulation, abhor that which is evil, and cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectionate one towards another, in brotherly love, in honour preferring one another." This is how Christians are meant to behave. And then it says, "Not slothful in business, not lazy, but fervent in spirit, serving the Lord." And verse 12 is the one to which I want to call your attention. "Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer." It's always difficult when we're going through bad times to be patient, especially sometimes when we may be seriously ill. It's difficult and it's trying, but it's something that Christians must always attempt to do. Those of you who are familiar with the scriptures will know that Christ never seemed to rush anywhere during his ministry. There's no record of him rushing or running or hastening. It was always peaceful and patient. And of course he had enormous patience with the people with whom he had to deal. Everyone he met, Jesus Christ was patient in dealing with them. In Hebrews chapter 12, and there at verse 1, we read, Hebrews 12:1, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, pardon me, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us." I'd like to give, if I may, 4 very simple points in regard to patience. And as I say, they're very simple. Number 1, excuse me, you have to accept in life what is outside your control. Many people try to change things over which they have no control, and they're obviously on to a losing game. You can't change something over which you have no control. As a Christian, of course, we can pray about things over which we have no control, and we're encouraged to do that. But you can't change them. So don't keep fighting with something that you can't control. Leave it to one side. Don't worry about it. Don't become in such a state that you are worried all the time. If you can't control something, leave it. Second, patience actually improves your physical health. Patience reduces stress and negative emotions. Patience, in fact, has been proved to lower a heart rate and to decrease the risk of burnout, contributing to wellness, overall wellness. You and I both know that chronic stress has detrimental effects on our physical well-being. Therefore, don't become stressful and angry all the time. Be patient. Patience also in our lives gives us peace, and it gives peace to other people around us. Who wants to be around an impatient, angry person all the time? Nobody. So it makes for good human relations as it improves your physical health. It also can help you approach problems more thoughtfully, meaning we don't rush into poor solutions out of frustration. I've done that many times. We all have. We get so frustrated, we're like the King Saul. We want to take things into our own hands and make a decision now. Very few decisions in life, brethren, need to be made now. Give them time. The third thing you can do is you can shift your perspective. That means instead of viewing something as a frustrating obstacle, trying to see it as a chance to pause, to reflect, or even perhaps learn something new. Having patience gives you time to shift your perspective. And point 4, very briefly, the more patient we are, the more likely we are to appreciate the present moment. The more we're able to experience joy in our daily lives, and the more easy it is to find satisfaction in our personal relationships and in our activities. And I think also you will know that when you are patient, you become a better listener. If you ever talk to people who keep interrupting you, it's a very unpleasant experience. Don't do that as a Christian when we talk to other people. Be patient. Allow them to say what they have to say. Then think about your response. And you will find your relationships improved because of that one simple point. There was a very well-known religious writer called Dr. Jim Packer, and he wrote a little story, a little interesting piece I'd like to read to you. In the Bible, as you know, patience is often referred to as waiting on the Lord. And he says, Packer, it's a constant refrain in the Psalms, and it is an important, necessary word for us. God often keeps us waiting. He is not in such a hurry as we are, Packer says, and it is not his way to give more light on the future than we need for action in the present, or to guide us more than one step at a time. That's the way God works with us through our Christian lives. We've all experienced that, haven't we, over our lives, that things happen one at a time. That's the way God works. And when we are in doubt, Packer says, do nothing, but continue to wait on God, because he says, when action is needed, light will come. There is one scripture in the Bible, in the book of Psalms, that is regarded as the, if you like, the key scripture on patience in the scriptures. And it is in the book of Psalms, chapter 37. Psalm chapter 37, and there at verse 7. You've read this many times. Rest in the Lord, Psalm 37:7. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked devices to pass. Don't worry about them. Don't pay all your attention to them. Rest in the Lord. Wait patiently for him. And then in verse 8, cease from anger. Forsake wrath. Fret not yourself in any wise to do evil. I hope you have an enjoyable Sabbath for the rest of the day.